Turning now to a deeper look at another hot-winded politician who's desperately treading water when it comes to obscuring her ties to members of the Somali community, directly linked to Minnesota's staggering welfare fraud scandal. As you may be aware, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar recently revealed an enormous and rather sudden one-year leap in her own personal net worth. Yeah, I kind of wonder how that happened as well. Not coincidentally, she's also personally responsible for launching the bill which expanded federal funding for her state's pandemic-era food and child care programs, basically opening the floodgates to her district's Somali-linked schemes, which are at the very heart of the entire fraud scandal itself. In a nutshell, Omar used the threat of the pandemic to convince her fellow lawmakers on Capitol Hill to back a measure which would allow state governments to increase their welfare payouts, all while simultaneously removing any federal oversight concerning the requirements to qualify for those programs. It's a pretty good trick if you can get away with it. And even better if you can somehow wind up with a net worth of $30 million when it's all said and done. That takes a little bit of talent. In the meantime, despite revelations that her state's Feeding Our Future program was scammed by dozens of criminals to the tune of more than $250 million, making it the largest pandemic-era fraud case in our nation, Omar is still standing by her initial measure and claiming it did much more good than harm because it ultimately fed a number of hungry children. And no word on whether or not those hungry children are related to the dozens of alleged scammers of Somali origin who arguably profited from their outlandish schemes. Raising eyebrows just a little bit further, a number of people personally linked to Omar herself, including a few contributors to her previous congressional campaigns, have already pleaded guilty for their roles in scamming their states out of millions of dollars in taxpayer money. In case you're not aware, their schemes were directly related to the expanded food programs, which Omar herself went to bat for on Capitol Hill. Look, feel free to connect the dots yourself, and when you're done doing that, chime in and leave us a comment. Tell us what you're thinking. Meanwhile, now beginning to appear as if Somali-linked scams are even more prevalent and widespread than we previously thought. For example, it's just been revealed that a couple of Somali-run nonprofit organizations in both Minnesota and Ohio, which each receive significant grant money from the federal government, they actually used a questionable Somali-run accounting firm to perform their required audits. Not surprisingly, the companies each received glowing reports from the accountants, imagine that, despite debatable tax forms, allegations of potential fraud, and questions concerning the legality of the audits themselves. Hey, by the way, as a result of what's going on, the Trump administration now deploying 2,000 additional ICE and Homeland Security agents to the Twin Cities area. It's part of their federal crackdown on illegal immigration and, transnational crime. Final thought, and this is the News Roundup Lowdown. For the most part, in every facet of life, there's oversight. Members of law enforcement, for example, they wear those body cameras. In the medical industry, you got the nurses, doctors, surgeons, and all the rest. They have someone to answer to. It's called accountability. It's good business, and it just makes good common sense. By and large, accountability is there. It's in place to keep everyone on the straight and narrow, but they do things a little bit differently in Minnesota's 5th District. All beginning to look like the Congresswoman intentionally created the perfect crime. Sounds like she pulled the covers over the oversight. And regardless of whether or not she did it for personal gain, she appears to be at the very least an enabler. With nobody watching the company store, a number of people made off with a boatload of dough. The groups they were charged with supporting received little, if anything. And while dozens of people have been convicted in Omar's district, the architect behind the Meals Act still claims she had no knowledge of the big heist. Now, in her defense, I'll give her this. Casino owners, they never know when Danny Ocean and his pals are going to do a job either. So there's that. Investigations are still ongoing. The money, long gone, and each of us as taxpayers, we're on the hook, left to pick up the tab with absolutely nothing to show for it.